The human prisoner. The throne room of the Xelthari Empire was dark and cold. Giant black pillars stretched to the ceiling, covered in glowing alien symbols. At the center, sitting on a throne made of sharp metallic bones, was Queen Xelthari, ruler of the Xelthari species. Her red eyes burned with frustration as she listened to her scientists. "Our species is dying," one of them said, his voice shaking. "No male can give you an heir, my queen. Our genetic code is broken." Xelthari's claws scratched against the armrest of her throne. She had known this for a long time. The war with humans had weakened their race. They had lost thousands of warriors, and now their future was at risk. "Then find a way," she growled. The scientist hesitated before speaking again. We have found a way, but it is not what you will expect." Xelthari narrowed her eyes. "Speak." "A human," the scientist said. "Only a human can give you an heir. Their DNA is compatible with yours." The queen's fingers curled into a fist. A human. The thought disgusted her. Humans were weak, fragile creatures. But as much as she hated them, she could not ignore the truth. If she wanted her empire to survive, she needed to do the unthinkable. She stood up, her long dark armor clanking against the floor. "Bring me the prisoner." Inside the cell, Ethan Carter sat against the cold metal wall of his prison cell. His muscles ached from the fights he had been forced into, but his mind was still sharp. He had been a soldier in Earth's defense forces, fighting against the Xelthari invasion. But in the last great battle, he had been captured. He wasn't afraid. He had faced death many times before. But something was different today. The guards who usually ignored him were tense, whispering. Then, the doors slammed open. Ethan looked up. A group of warriors entered, their armor dark and heavy. And behind them, standing taller than all of them, was her, Queen Xelthari. She was terrifying. Her armor looked like it had grown from her body, shifting as she moved. Her eyes glowed like burning embers, and her claws were long enough to tear through steel. But Ethan didn't flinch. "Human," she said, her voice sharp like a blade. "Stand." Ethan stayed seated, smirking. "I think I'll stay right here, thanks." The guards moved forward, but the queen raised a hand, stopping them. Her eyes studied him, filled with something between disgust and curiosity. "You are stronger than the others," she said. "That is why you are still alive." Ethan chuckled. "Lucky me." The queen stepped closer, her presence almost suffocating. "You will serve a purpose." Ethan's smile faded slightly. What kind of purpose? She leaned down, her face inches from his. "You will give me an heir." For a moment, there was silence. Then Ethan laughed, a full, amused laugh. "You must be joking." The queen didn't react. "You think this is funny?" Ethan wiped his mouth. "Oh, I think it's hilarious. You've spent years trying to wipe out my people, and now you need one of us. That's rich." The queen's claws twitched, but she didn't strike. Instead, she smirked, a dangerous, sharp-toothed expression. "You are brave, human, but you do not have a choice." Ethan's body tensed. He had survived torture, battles, and prison. But this was something new. "No," he said firmly. "I'm not doing it." The queen chuckled. "You misunderstand. This is not a request." She turned to her guards. "Take him to the pits. If he survives, we will see if he is worthy." Ethan was dragged to his feet. He didn't resist, but his mind was already working. He needed to find a way out of this. But as they pulled him from the cell, he had a sinking feeling. There was no way out. The throne room again. The queen sat back on her throne, watching as the doors closed behind Ethan. One of her advisors stepped forward. "You truly believe this human can be useful?" Xelthari exhaled, her fingers tapping against the throne. "If he is strong enough to survive, then yes," she said. "If not, then he was never meant to be part of my legacy." She leaned back, her red eyes glowing in the darkness. This was only the beginning. Resistance and a deadly proposal. Ethan Carter landed hard on the cold metal floor of the Xelthari combat pit. His body ached from the rough treatment of the guards, but he pushed himself up, wiping a trickle of blood from his mouth. Overhead, alien torches flickered with a blue flame, casting eerie shadows across the arena-like structure. The smell of metal, sweat, and something worse, something ancient, hung in the air. From the high balcony above, Queen Xelthari watched, her sharp crimson eyes glowing in the dim light. "You have a choice, human," she announced, her voice echoing across the chamber. "Fight or die." Ethan let out a short laugh, shaking his head. "That's not much of a choice, lady." The queen's lips curled in amusement. She gestured with one clawed hand, and the heavy doors at the far end of the pit rumbled open. Something massive stepped forward. Ethan's smirk faded as a hulking, four-armed beast lumbered into the pit. Its black exoskeleton gleamed like polished stone, its jaws lined with razor-sharp fangs. It stood at least 10 feet tall, its muscular arms bulging with strength. A Xelthari warbeast. Ethan rolled his shoulders, muttering, "Of course it's a damn monster." The queen leaned forward from her throne. "If you survive, you may prove yourself worthy of my empire. If you fall, you were never worth my time." Ethan exhaled sharply, eyes scanning his surroundings. He had no weapon, no armor, nothing but his instincts and his fists. The warbeast let out a bone-shaking roar and charge. The fight for survival. Ethan barely dodged as the monster's fist came crashing down, shattering the ground where he had been standing a second earlier. He rolled to the side, springing to his feet just as the beast swung a massive claw toward him. This time, he was ready. He ducked under the swing and delivered a hard punch to the creature's ribs. It was like punching a steel wall. Shit. The warbeast didn't even flinch. It grabbed Ethan by the arm and hurled him across the pit. He hit the ground hard, pain flaring through his back. Above him, he could hear the queen chuckling. "She's enjoying this," Ethan thought bitterly. But he wasn't done yet. He never was. Gritting his teeth, he pushed himself up just as the beast lunged at him again. This time, he didn't dodge. He ran straight at it. The warbeast swung its arm down, but at the last second, Ethan slid under its legs, grabbing a loose metal spike from the broken arena floor. As he came up behind the beast, he drove the spike deep into the back of its knee joint. The creature roared in agony, stumbling. "That's right, big guy. Even monsters have weak spots." Ethan didn't hesitate. He grabbed a second jagged piece of metal and leaped onto the creature's back. With all his strength, he drove the shard into the base of its skull. The warbeast screamed, convulsed, and then collapsed. For a moment, there was silence. Then, the arena erupted in alien cheers and growls. Xelthari warriors banged their weapons against their armor, some nodding in approval, others watching with a newfound respect. Above, the queen stood from her throne. The queen's deadly proposal. Ethan wiped the sweat from his brow, breathing heavily as he looked up at her. "Satisfied?" he called out. The queen's red eyes gleamed as she descended the balcony stairs, moving like a predator. Her warriors stepped aside instantly, clearing a path for her as she approached Ethan. Up close, she was even more terrifying. Taller than any human, her dark armor shifting like it was alive, her presence suffocating. She stopped mere inches from him. Ethan refused to step back. "Impressive," she admitted. "You fight with instinct. With fire, you fight like a warlord." Ethan snorted. "Thanks, but I'm not applying for a job." Her gaze didn't waver. "You do not realize what you have just done, human." Ethan frowned. "What are you talking about?" The queen smirked, a dangerous, knowing smirk. "The Xelthari tradition. You have defeated my chosen warbeast in single combat." Ethan's gut tightened. "And that means you are now my official consort." Silence. Ethan blinked. "I'm Doha hate." The queen tilted her head slightly, as if amused by his shock. You wished to resist me. Now you have no choice. You are bound by our law. You are mine. Ethan took a step back, shaking his head. No, no, no. I don't care about your laws, your traditions, or your creepy giant monster fights. I'm not playing along with this. The queen's smirk disappeared. Her expression hardened. Then you misunderstand the situation. She turned slightly and gestured toward the warriors standing along the edges of the arena. You have won the right to be my consort, she said. But if you reject this honor, my warriors will consider it an insult. They will challenge you, one by one. Ethan's blood ran cold. He looked around. There were dozens of them, all heavily armed, all waiting for him to make the wrong move. He let out a long sigh, rubbing his forehead. You've got to be kidding me. The queen stepped closer again, her voice dropping to a near whisper. You are not weak, human. You could be more than a prisoner here. You could be something greater. Ethan clenched his jaw. He hated this, hated that she was right. He looked back at her. And if I say yes? The queen's lips curled slightly. Then you will stand by my side, not as a prisoner, but as my warlord. Ethan exhaled slowly. He was trapped. He knew it, but if there was one thing he had learned in war, it was this. Sometimes survival meant playing the long game. He looked up at her and smirked. Fine, but on my terms. The queen's smile returned, cold, victorious. We shall see, human. The bonding ritual begins. Ethan Carter stood at the entrance of the royal biochamber, his hands clenched into fists. The air inside was thick and humid, filled with the scent of something ancient, a mix of metal, burning incense, and something distinctly alien. Before him, the chamber stretched out like a cathedral of nightmares. Massive organic pillars pulsed faintly, their surfaces covered in strange, glowing veins. The walls were alive, shifting ever so slightly as if breathing. In the center, a large obsidian platform stood, covered in ancient carvings that glowed a deep crimson. At the far end, standing with eerie grace, was Queen Xelthari. She watched him, her red eyes unblinking, unreadable. She had traded her usual war armor for something lighter, a ceremonial robe of black and silver, draped over her biomechanical exoskeleton. Ethan exhaled sharply. All right, let's get this over with. What's this ritual about? The queen's lips curled slightly. You still do not understand, do you? Ethan crossed his arms. Oh, I understand plenty. You forced me into this consort nonsense because of some crazy alien tradition. Now you're dragging me into some freaky ceremony. What's next? You gonna tell me I have to dance for your amusement? Somewhere behind him, a Xelthari priest growled in disapproval. Xelthari tilted her head, amused. Humans truly have no sense of honor. Ethan scoffed. Honor? Lady, I just killed a monster for your entertainment. That's enough honor for one day. The queen took a step closer. This is no mere ritual, human. It is a merging, a test of strength, a moment where your body and mind will either prove worthy. She let the sentence hang for a moment, or you will break. Ethan's jaw tightened. Break? The queen gestured toward the obsidian platform. Step forward, Ethan Carter. A trial of blood and fire. Ethan hesitated. Every instinct in his body screamed not to trust this, but he had no choice. He stepped forward onto the platform. The stone beneath him was warm, pulsing beneath his boots. The queen followed, standing opposite him. Her crimson gaze never left his. The priest standing at the edge of the chamber raised a sharp, bone-like dagger. He began to chant in the Xelthari tongue, a deep, guttural sound that sent chills through Ethan's spine. Then, without warning, the queen slashed her palm open with her claw. Thick, dark silver blood oozed from the wound, dripping onto the platform. The carvings beneath them flared to life. the glow intensifying. Ethan barely had time to react before the priest turned to him, dagger in hand. "Your blood," Xelthari commanded. "Now." Ethan scowled. Of course. Alien blood magic. Why not? Before the priest could move, Ethan grabbed the dagger himself and sliced across his palm. He winced slightly as warm red blood spilled onto the stone, mixing with the queen's. The moment their blood merged, the air shifted. A deep hum filled the chamber. The glowing carvings pulsed, and a sudden wave of heat crashed into Ethan's body. His vision blurred. His muscles tightened. His heart pounded like a war drum. Then, pain. A sharp burning sensation ripped through his veins, spreading like fire. Ethan gritted his teeth, dropping to one knee. He felt something inside him shift, his very cells reacting to whatever alien force had been unleashed. He could hear the queen's breathing grow heavy. Even she was feeling it. But for Ethan, it was different. The pain wasn't just physical. It was mental. His mind was being pulled somewhere else. And then he saw visions of the Xelthari past. Images flooded his brain. He saw a young Xelthari Queen, not Xelthari, but one from long ago, leading her warriors into battle against monstrous creatures that lived in the void. He saw entire planets burning, the screams of alien species crushed beneath the Empire's rule. Then suddenly, the visions shifted. He saw humans, Earth, his home, its blue oceans, its green forests. But it wasn't as he remembered. It was in ruins, burning, broken, conquered by an unknown force. Then he saw her, Xelthari, standing alone on a battlefield, surrounded by the bodies of her own kind. Her armor cracked, her empire falling. And then, nothing. Ethan gasped as he snapped back to reality, his body trembling. Sweat dripped from his brow as he clutched his head. What the hell was that? He demanded. The queen was breathing heavily, one hand pressed against her temple. "You saw?" she asked, her voice quieter than before. Ethan pushed himself to his feet. "Yeah, and I want answers. Now." The queen studied him for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She smiled. Not a mocking smirk, not amusement, but something else. "You survived," she said softly. "You are stronger than I expected." Ethan exhaled sharply. "Lucky me." The queen stepped forward, closer than ever before. "You saw the future, human. And now, you are part of it." Ethan didn't like the sound of that. The queen reached out, her clawed fingers grazing his jaw. Her touch was cold, yet oddly gentle. "You are bound to me now," she whispered. "By blood, by vision, by fate." Ethan clenched his fists. "I don't believe in fate." Xelthari's smirk returned. "Then you have much to learn, consort." Ethan sighed, already regretting everything. The queen's rage. The Xelthari war chamber was silent, save for the steady, mechanical hum of ancient machinery. Holomaps of the galaxy flickered in the air, displaying real-time data on the Empire's borders. Ethereal red lines marked war zones, while blue dots represented strongholds still under Xelthari control. At the center of the chamber stood Queen Xelthari. Her red eyes blazed with fury as she stared at the projection. Her claws flexed, leaving faint scratches on the steel railing in front of her. She was livid. Behind her, standing near the entrance of the chamber, was Ethan Carter. He leaned against the cold metal wall, arms crossed, watching her carefully. He had seen plenty of anger in his time. Commanders, officers, soldiers pushed to the edge of war. But this was something else. She was seething, her breath heavy, her muscles tensed like a predator ready to strike. Finally, she spoke. "They dare challenge me," she growled, her voice a deadly whisper. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Who?" The queen turned sharply, her expression fierce. "The council. The weak, spineless bureaucrats who call themselves my advisors." Ethan smirked slightly. "Ah, Let me guess. They don't approve of me. She let out a low, dangerous chuckle. They do not merely disapprove. They seek to remove you. Ethan's smirk faded. Well, that's not surprising. The Queen's claws clenched. They believe my decision to take a human consort is a disgrace. They say I am tainting the bloodline, that I am unfit to rule. Ethan exhaled sharply. So what happens now? The Queen turned back to the holomap, her gaze dark. Now, she repeated. Now they will learn the price of their betrayal. Betrayal in the court. The doors to the war chamber slammed open, and a group of high-ranking Xelthari officials entered. Their robes of deep crimson and silver shimmered in the dim light, their elongated heads adorned with intricate metallic crests. At their front stood High Chancellor Xelthari, the leader of the Xelthari Council. His violet eyes glowed softly as he stepped forward, his expression grim and unyielding. "My queen," he said, bowing slightly, "you summoned us." Xelthari remained still. "You have conspired against me." Xelthari did not flinch. "We have advised against your reckless course of action." Ethan pushed off the wall, stepping closer. "Right. Advised. Because trying to get rid of me is just friendly advice." Xelthari's gaze flickered toward him, his face twisting in disdain. "The human is an insult to our traditions. He does not belong at your side." Xelthari's claws scraped against the table. "You speak of tradition, yet you cower when our enemies press against our borders. You claim honor, yet you plot in the shadows like a coward." Xelthari's jaw tightened. "The Council has ruled for centuries. We do not act lightly. If you will not see reason, then we must take action." Ethan tensed. He knew that tone. He had heard it before in war. This wasn't just a political disagreement. This was a coup. Xelthari took a step forward. "Is that a threat, Xelthari?" The High Chancellor met her gaze evenly. "It is a necessity." And then the attack began. The Queen unleashes hell. The moment the words left Xelthari's lips, the guards stationed near the entrance turned, their weapons charging with blue energy. Ethan moved on instinct. He lunged forward, grabbing the first guard's wrist before he could fire. Using the momentum, Ethan twisted the guard's arm, forcing the weapon to discharge into another traitor's chest. The chamber exploded into chaos. Xelthari, without hesitation, lashed out. Her claws tore through armor, her movements a blur of deadly precision. She seized one of the guards by the throat, lifting him off the ground before crushing his windpipe with a sickening crunch. Ethan ducked as another attacker lunged at him with a blade. He grabbed a discarded weapon from the floor, barely blocking the strike before slamming the barrel against his opponent's jaw. The guard staggered back, and Ethan took his shot. One down. Across the room, Xelthari was a force of nature. One of the traitorous council members lunged at her with an energy spear, but she caught it midair, snapping it like a twig before ripping out the attacker's throat with one swift motion. Ethan barely had time to react as another warrior came at him. This one was bigger, stronger. He dodged the first strike, barely avoiding the second. Then, the Queen moved. Faster than lightning, she was behind Ethan's attacker, her claws slicing through armor and flesh alike. The warrior collapsed, lifeless. Ethan turned to her, slightly out of breath. "Not bad." Xelthari smirked. "You kept up." A warning to the traitors. When the chaos settled, only Xelthari remained, kneeling before the Queen, his breathing ragged. Blood pooled around him, staining the once immaculate chamber floor. Xelthari stepped forward, towering over him. "You sought to overthrow me," she said, her voice like ice. "You failed." Xelthari's gaze remained defiant. "Others will rise." Xelthari tilted her head. "Then I will crush them, too." She extended a single clawed finger, lifting Xelthari's chin so he was forced to look into her eyes. "I will burn this empire to the ground before I let cowards like you take it from me." Ethan watched silently. He had seen executions before. He had killed to survive. But there was something about Xelthari that was different. She didn't kill out of cruelty. She killed because it was necessary. And then, she made her decision. With one swift motion, she drove her claw through Valtrak's chest. The High Chancellor's body slumped forward. It was over. A new dawn for the Empire. Xelthari turned to Ethan. The Council is dead. The traitors are gone. But the real war is just beginning. Ethan met her gaze. So what happens now? The Queen's smirk returned. Now, my warlord, we take the fight to them. Ethan sighed. Figures. And as the Xelthari banners burned in the distance, a new era began. War on two fronts. The air was thick with the scent of burning metal and blood. Across the Xelthari capital, alarms wailed, their deep, pulsating sound filling the towering black spires of the city. The once pristine skyline now bore the scars of battle. Plumes of smoke curled into the dark sky, and fires burned in the lower districts. Ethan Carter stood atop the Imperial Command Tower, surveying the chaos below. His fists clenched. So this was how it started. Beside him, Queen Xelthari's expression was unreadable, but her crimson eyes burned with fury. They didn't waste any time, Ethan muttered. The traitors were never working alone, the Queen replied. They had outside help. Ethan exhaled sharply. Let me guess, our good friends from the Vroken Dominion. The Queen nodded. The Vroken Dominion, a rival alien empire, brutal, relentless, and hungry for conquest. They had long coveted Xelthari territory, waiting for a sign of weakness. The coup attempt had been that sign. Now, their warships hung in orbit like vultures, and their ground forces were already engaging in skirmishes with what remained of Xelthari's loyalists. And then there was the other front, the internal war. Not all of the Xelthari people supported their queen's decision to take a human consort. Many of the surviving traitors had retreated into the shadows, amassing power, waiting for their chance to strike again. They would not stop until the queen was dead. Two wars, one against an external enemy, one against her own people. And Ethan Carter, a human caught in the middle of it all. He shook his head, chuckling darkly. Hell of a honeymoon, huh? The Queen turned to him, smirking slightly. You knew what you were getting into, human. Ethan let out a breath. Not really. But I guess it's too late for second thoughts. The Queen's expression hardened. We must act. Now. The Queen's gambit. The War Council gathered in the lower levels of the tower. Xelthari generals, strategists, and warriors stood around a massive holographic display of the planet and the surrounding star system. Red markers blinked where enemy forces were pushing through the outer defenses. Ethan leaned in, scanning the battle map. We're outnumbered, outgunned, and split between two wars. One of the Xelthari commanders, an older warrior with deep scars across his chitinous face, nodded grimly. The Vrokans have deployed their elite strike forces in the western sector. Meanwhile, the rebel factions are gathering in the lower districts. If they unify, we will be fighting an insurgency while the Dominion bombards us from above. Ethan rubbed his jaw. We can't afford to fight them both at the same time. We need to make a move that changes the game. Xelthari's gaze was sharp. And what do you propose, warlord? Ethan pointed at the hologram. We hit them where they least expect it. A bold plan. Ethan traced his finger across the holographic battlefield. The Vroken fleet is orbiting the planet, but their ground forces are concentrated in the western sector, right? The general nodded. Correct. They are preparing for a final push into the capital. Ethan smirked. Good. Let's give them something to push against. The room fell silent as the warriors stared at him. Explain, Xelthari said. Ethan's eyes gleamed. We make it look like we're falling back. Abandon the western sector. Make it look like we're retreating. Let them advance deep into the city, into the lower districts. A younger commander growled in frustration. That is suicide. You would surrender the city. Ethan shook his head. No, we're not surrendering anything. We're setting a trap. He tapped the display, zooming into the lower districts, where the rebel factions were hiding. We don't fight two enemies separately. We make them fight each other. Xelthari's expression flickered with understanding. You want to lure the Dominion forces into rebel territory. Ethan grinned. Exactly. They're both enemies. They both want the throne. So we let them take their war to each other. A ripple of murmurs spread through the council. Xelthari tilted her head, considering. It is dangerous. Ethan shrugged. War is dangerous. Silence. Then the queen smiled. Then we shall see if your human cunning is as dangerous as they say. The battle for the capital. The trap was set. Xelthari forces staged a fake retreat, pulling back deeper into the city, leaving the western sector seemingly undefended. The Vrokan warlords took the bait, their troops marching in, confident in their victory. And then, the chaos began. The moment the Vrokan soldiers entered the lower districts, they found themselves under attack. Not by the Queen's forces, but by the rebels. The insurgents mistook the Vrokan troops for an invasion force, believing they had come to destroy them and claim the throne for themselves. Gunfire erupted. The streets became a war zone. The Queen's forces, hidden in the shadows, waited. And when the time was right, they struck. From the rooftops, from the alleyways, from the underground tunnels, Xelthari's warriors launched their ambush. The Vrokans, already weakened from fighting the rebels, were completely overwhelmed. By the time they realized they had been tricked, it was too late. The turning point. Hours later, the battlefield was silent. The rebels had been eliminated. The Vrokans had been forced into retreat. The Queen stood atop the remains of the western sector, her red eyes scanning the horizon. Ethan stood beside her, blood-stained, breathing heavily. Well, he said, grinning, that worked out better than I expected. Xelthari chuckled softly. You have earned your place, warlord. Ethan sighed. Great. So, what's next? The Queen's gaze lifted toward the sky, toward the Vrokan fleet still orbiting the planet. Her claws flexed. Now, she murmured. Now we take the fight to them. Ethan groaned. Of course we do. The last stand. The air inside the Xelthari warship was thick with tension. Deep inside the command center, holographic displays flickered, casting red and blue light across the metallic walls. Warlords and strategists huddled over the battle map, murmuring amongst themselves. The hum of the ship's core vibrated beneath their feet as the countdown to war approached its final moments. Ethan Carter stood near the command throne, his arms crossed as he studied the battlefield from above. Through the massive transparisteel viewport, he could see them, the Vrokan Armada. Hundreds of warships. Massive, jagged behemoths covered in dark, pulsating armor. The Vrokans didn't build sleek, elegant ships. They built monstrosities. Hulking, predatory constructs designed to tear through enemy fleets like living beasts. And they were here for blood. Beside him, Queen Xelthari sat upon her war throne, her crimson eyes burning with calculated fury. Unlike the warlords gathered around her, she was not speaking. She was simply watching, waiting, calculating. Ethan exhaled slowly. This is bad. One of the Xelthari commanders, a grizzled warrior named Verkor, turned to face him. Your human instincts serve you well, warlord. The Dominion has come in force. Their numbers far exceed our own. Ethan smirked. I was hoping someone would say, don't worry, we've got this. The commander did not smile. Xelthari finally spoke. The Dominion believes we are weak, that we are still divided, that our war with the rebels has left us vulnerable. Her claws slowly tapped against the armrest of her throne. They are wrong. A plan of madness. Ethan took a deep breath, stepping forward. All right, let's cut the dramatics and get real. We can't win this in a straight-up fight. Their core growled. Then we are already doomed. Ethan ignored him. He pointed at the holographic map of the battlefield. The Dominion's ships are stronger than ours, heavily armored, shields reinforced. If we fight them head-on, we'll be vaporized before we even break their front line. The room grew silent. Even Xelthari listened. Ethan's eyes flickered with sharp calculation. But if we don't hit them head-on? A few warlords exchanged glances. Explain, Xelthari commanded. Ethan grinned. We turn our weakness into a weapon. He zoomed in on the Dominion fleet formation. They're expecting us to hold the capital, to fight defensively. But what if we don't? Asterisk, asterisk. A warlord scoffed. Flee. Surrender. Ethan shook his head. No. We do something reckless. Something insane. He pointed toward the heart of the Dominion fleet, their command carrier. We don't defend. We attack. Directly. We strike the heart of the beast. Murmurs broke out in the room. One of the younger commanders spoke hesitantly. That's suicide. Xelthari smirked slightly. Or brilliance. Ethan turned to her. The Dominion is slow. They're big, strong, and heavy, but they don't react quickly. If we launch a full assault on their command carrier, they'll scramble to defend it. That means their fleet will be caught off guard, repositioning instead of overwhelming us immediately. He leaned forward, pressing both hands against the battle map. We don't need to fight the entire fleet. We just need to kill their leader. Xelthari's eyes gleamed. Decapitate the beast. Ethan nodded. And the body dies. The Queen's decision. The warlords hesitated. This plan was madness. But Xelthari stood, her midnight black armor shifting like liquid metal around her form. We attack. Her voice echoed through the chamber, silencing all hesitation. Ethan met her gaze. Just one problem. The Queen raised a brow. Which is? Ethan smirked. How the hell do we get close enough? Xelthari's lips curled into something dangerous. Leave that to me. The storm begins. The Xelthari fleet moved in silence, their engines running on low energy to avoid detection. Above them, the Dominion armada loomed, its battleships shifting position, preparing for an invasion of the capital. They didn't see it coming. Until it was too late. The moment Xelthari's warships exploded out of the void, the Dominion's entire formation broke apart. Xelthari stealth cruisers emerged from the dark, launching devastating plasma torpedoes directly into the Dominion's forward lines. Enemy warships ignited like dying stars, their shields overwhelmed before they could even return fire. But the real attack had yet to begin. Xelthari's flagship, the Abyssal Wrath, cut through the chaos, its dark form slicing toward the Dominion's command carrier like a spear. Ethan stood on the bridge, gripping the rail. We're going in hot. Explosions ripped through the void as the Abyssal Wrath punched through enemy fire, weaving between Dominion cruisers like a predator in the deep. The Dominion fleet scrambled, their defenses shifting to stop the unexpected direct assault on their leader. Ethan grinned. They're panicking. Xelthari's claws flexed. Then we strike. The final charge. The command carrier loomed ahead, a monstrous thing, its hull covered in biomechanical plating that pulsed like a living organism. It was heavily defended, which is why Ethan and Xelthari weren't planning to fight from a distance. Instead, they were boarding it. Prepare the assault team, Xelthari ordered. Ethan glanced at her. You're really coming with me. The Queen smirked. You are my warlord, are you not? Ethan shook his head, chuckling. You really don't do things halfway, do you? She placed a hand on his shoulder, her grip strong. Neither do you, human. The boarding pods fired, launching them across the void, straight into the heart of enemy territory. As the Dominion flagship's airlocks buckled under the impact, Ethan took a deep breath. This was it. The final stand. The moment that would decide the fate of the war. And as the doors burst open, and enemy soldiers poured in, weapons raised. Ethan Carter charged forward, the human warlord. The airlock doors exploded inward, showering the dark metallic corridor in sparks and molten shrapnel. Ethan Carter didn't hesitate. He lunged forward, plasma rifle raised, firing into the dense smoke. The blue-white energy blasts ripped through the first wave of Dominion soldiers, their armor sizzling under the intense heat. Behind him, Queen Xelthari moved like a specter of death. Her claws sliced through enemy warriors, her energy blade flashing crimson as it cut through reinforced plating like paper. The Abyssal Wrath's elite warriors followed, their battle cries echoing down the halls of the Dominion's flagship. The battle had begun, and there was no turning back. A fight in the belly of the beast. Ethan ducked under an incoming plasma shot, rolling behind a twisted bulkhead for cover. He exhaled sharply, gripping his rifle tighter. "This place is a damn maze," he muttered. Xelthari sliced through an enemy officer and turned to him. "We must reach the command deck. The Dominion warlord is there." Ethan peeked out of cover, scanning the corridors. The ship was alive, its walls pulsating like the skin of some massive creature. The Dominion didn't build ships. They grew them. The biomechanical tendrils along the walls reacted to their presence, twitching as if aware of the invaders. Ethan didn't like it. Not one bit. "All right, we push forward," he said, reloading his rifle. "Let's end this." The gauntlet to the command deck. The deeper they moved, the worse the resistance became. The Dominion had anticipated a direct assault, and their best warriors, the Black Guards, stood in their way. These were no ordinary soldiers, towering brutes, clad in organic power armor, their multi-eyed helmets glowing a sickly green. Their weapons were not guns, but living creatures, their biocannons pulsating and shrieking as they fired explosive rounds. Ethan barely had time to react before a blast erupted beside him, sending him crashing against a wall. The impact knocked the air from his lungs, his visor cracking from the force. But before the Black Guard could finish him, Xelthari struck. The Queen moved faster than thought, leaping onto the behemoth's shoulders, her claws carving deep into the armor's weak points. With a sickening crunch, she ripped out the creature's spinal cord, its glowing blood spraying across the corridor. Ethan coughed, pushing himself up. "You just had to one-up me, huh?" Xelthari smirked. "Move faster, human." Ethan rolled his eyes but didn't argue. They pushed forward, cutting through Dominion forces, every step bringing them closer to the bridge. Then, the ship screamed, the guardian of the Dominion. A low, guttural howl vibrated through the walls. The very ship shuddered, as if alive. Then, the corridor ahead of them shifted. The metal split apart, revealing a massive chamber beyond. And at its center stood a nightmare. A towering, four-armed monstrosity, dripping with bioluminescent energy, its skull-like face framed by writhing tendrils. The Dominion warbeast. Ethan exhaled sharply. "Oh, that's just fantastic." Xelthari's expression darkened. Their last line of defense. The warbeast roared, its multiple eyes locking onto them, before it charged. The impact was earth-shattering. Ethan barely had time to roll aside before a massive claw slammed into the ground, shattering metal and sending shockwaves down the corridor. Xelthari darted forward, her energy blade flashing. But the warbeast was faster than expected. It caught her midair, slamming her into the wall. Ethan fired his rifle, his plasma shots burning into the beast's hide, but it barely flinched. "You've got to be kidding me," he growled. Then, he noticed something. The veins running across the warbeast's body, they pulsed in a specific rhythm. A pattern. A weakness. "Xelthari," he shouted. "Go for the nerve clusters, back of the head." The Queen didn't question him. She moved like a blur, leaping onto the beast's back, her claws stabbing into its exposed nerves. The warbeast shrieked, its body convulsing violently. Ethan fired his last explosive round, aiming directly for the exposed weak point. Boom! The war beast collapsed, its body twitching before finally going still. Silence followed. Then, Xelthari let out a breath, stepping off the corpse. She looked at Ethan. "You learn fast." Ethan smirked. "I try." But they had no time to rest. The command deck was ahead. The final confrontation. The doors to the Dominion Bridge hissed open, revealing the throne room of their greatest enemy. At the center of the chamber, seated upon a grotesque, living throne, was Warlord Xelthari. His massive form shifted, dark purple energy crackling across his four muscular arms. His featureless black eyes gleamed as he gazed upon his uninvited guests. "So, the Queen of the Xelthari comes to beg for mercy." Xelthari stepped forward, her voice cold as ice. "No, I come to end you." Ethan cracked his neck. "Yeah, and I'm here to help with that." Xelthari laughed, the deep guttural sound reverberating through the chamber. "Then let us see if you are worthy of this galaxy." With a roar, the final battle began. The end of a war, the beginning of a legacy. The fight was brutal. Xelthari was faster than any enemy they had faced, his four arms wielding a different weapon each. Plasma blades, energy whips, biomechanical cannons. He was a living arsenal. But Ethan and Xelthari fought together. As one. The Queen's claws slashed through the warlord's defenses, while Ethan delivered pinpoint shots, striking weak points that only a human's instincts could detect. Xelthari fought like a monster, but they fought like warriors. And in the end, Xelthari plunged her blade into his chest, while Ethan fired one final shot into his skull. Xelthari fell. The Dominion had lost. The war was over. A new dawn. Hours later, Ethan stood at the balcony of the Xelthari capital, staring into the stars. The Dominion was broken, the rebels defeated, and beside him stood a queen. Xelthari gazed upon the galaxy before them. "We have won, Warlord." Ethan exhaled. "Yeah, but what now?" The queen's smirk returned. "Now, we shape the future." Ethan chuckled. "No pressure, huh?" And as the sun rose over the war-torn city, the legend of the human warlord and the alien queen was just beginning.